Let's paint the armor of this Saurus Warrior today. Yeah. Hi there, Chris here with another fresh tip for you all. In this video, we are going to continue our work on the Saurus Warrior from the new Seraphon army. And yeah, let's work on the armor and let's go for a mystical kind of approach to the armor. We're going to have a little bit of fun, I think. We're going to get things started with some lead belcher. This is the base metallic, and Croxagore scales, the Citadel contrast. We're going to lay a fairly generous amount down. This is about 1 part, probably more like 2 things of lead belcher, and then 1 dollop of Croxagore scales. Give it a nice thorough mixing, and then once that's done, we begin applying the base coat. Now we're applying this directly on top of the armor sections, which are still just primer. That was the Wraithbone spray. We could have applied a black before laying the metallic, as metallics really enjoy sitting on top of a black base, but I felt it wasn't entirely necessary, and this base layer paint, which is the lead belcher, sits on top of pretty much any color really nicely. Now again, the black probably would have really brought forward the metallic luster of all the details in this color. But you know, I mean, it's, you know, not entirely necessary. It'll sit there. And basically on these areas, I will apply 2 thin coats on all of these areas. I will apply it on the armor as well as the ankle and bracelets of this model. We're not going to worry about the shield or the spear at the moment. We're also very careful about applying it on his little chin guard and the little doodads that are kind of like on his cheeks as well. I'm not sure what those things were or how they're connected, but I didn't paint them like scales, and I'm not even sure if the default models in the books have that detail painted in metallics. But either way, we're doing it this way. We're having some fun here. We're having fun. So with this base coat done, again, we have 2 layers, excuse me. And here I'm just pointing out that there's a couple boo-boo spots there. I hit some on the jaw, and I also didn't apply any color onto the spines. The spines actually have like a little bit of a detail, like it's like kind of like a thing sitting on his spine. So we're going to paint those in metallic as well. So really quickly, again, I just simply repeat my process. When you are fairly consistent in how you gather your paint and how you mix your paints, you can get consistent results. And again, as I mentioned, it's really about consistency when you're playing with a lot of color mixtures. If you're painting straight from the pot, you really don't have to worry too heavily about your consistency as far as how much paint you gather and apply to your palette and all that. Again, it's just, you know, you don't have to really worry about it too heavily. So again, you know, when you're doing mixtures, yeah, you kind of want to be consistent. Not to scare anybody, but you know. Drakenhof Nightshade is next. We're going to apply this all over the armor. Now, the reason I went for the Drakenhof Nightshade is because it has a nice deep dark blue tinge to it, and that's what I wanted for the armor, as I wanted to shift it back towards a bit more of a blue side of things. As I applied it onto the surface, you can see how it's changing the values. One of the things that I find though with shade washes is they finish with a matte sort of finish, and that can end up killing a bit of the luster of the metallic paint, which I'm not a huge fan about when dealing with metallics. I prefer my metallics to be fairly shiny, as that really brings out the metallic paint. And I mean, if you're going to use metallic paint, you may as well go for a nice shiny finish, because again, it makes it all the more engaging visually as you are, you know, looking at the model in natural light and, you know, light of the gaming room and all these things, right? It just looks really, really darn cool. If you were painting display pieces, you know, usually that's why a lot of people go for non-metallic metal. And for anybody out there who's wondering, what's non-metallic metal? I'm sure we're going to cover that in at some point in the future. I do have other tutorials in the channel as well. But anyway, once we've applied that and we're happy and when it's dried, and again, you can see the metallic shine is like taken down just a little bit, right? We didn't thin out the Drakenhof Nightshade at all. We just applied it, and, you know, again, we could apply multiple layers and build up, you know, a gradient and go for a bit of a non-metallic metal look on the metallics. We're going to go with Iron Breaker next with Croxagore scales. And here we're going to use this as our highlight color. Now, in hindsight, I probably should have went with a little less Croxagore scales, as the metallic Iron Breaker is brighter than lead belcher, but because I had quite a bit of the Croxagore scales in the mixture, it gives me a nice bright metallic, but it is somewhat close to the Iron Breaker. And once I finish this initial highlight here, you'll see what I mean, how they're fairly close. But again, because it's being applied directly on top of that previous layer of the shade wash, which knocked out that shine, you see this really nice metallic shine come back. And that's what I really enjoy. And with the scales, I will knock that down with some Lamy and medium just to bring it back to a matte appearance so that the metallic areas really do shine. And when it's all said and done, I will gloss the metallic areas as well. Here you can see I'm simply applying the highlights and just reestablishing. It's really more or less going around the trim and just catching some of the high points. I do this on the bracelets as well. Again, I'm not going with any particular kind of highlighting scheme. It's more or less just an edge highlight that I'm working towards. Really straightforward, nothing terribly complex. We're not doing any crazy color blends this time. We're not doing any feathering. This is just some straight up layering of the paint. Again, it's really straightforward. And for those of you out there who are apprehensive about, engaging in different techniques and, trying out different things, I highly recommend you explore the paint and explore brush techniques and all of these things. And don't be afraid to try and fail at these things, because that is really the only way you're going to learn, is by failing at these, and enjoy and embrace your failures. I've embraced many failures. As you can see, it's just really straightforward. Again, I'm just going for just the high points, edges, leading edges on the helmet there. Again, with this highlight though, you can see how it really brings back that metallic shine. Next, I'm going to come back in with some Iron Breaker, slap it onto the palette. Are we adding medium? No, we're not adding medium yet. Switching over to a more detailed brush. And with this, I'm going to highlight the lower edges of the details and go around on the edge of the armor plates and other details. So again, this is just a straightforward edge highlight. For those of you not familiar with an edge highlight, you just simply load your brush with not too much paint, no thinner, and then with the very fine point, you can either draw in the highlight along the edge, or you can use the side of the bristles. And that's a lot of times when there's nice sharp details. This technique works for a lot of miniatures, especially armored miniatures like Space Marines and anything like that, Stormcast Eternals. We're going to add some contrast medium. So I'm going to take about 2 drops, grab the remainder of the Iron Breaker, which is undiluted, and we're going to apply it into the contrast medium. Now, we're not applying this like a contrast paint. I just want to do a light little glaze, pushing the color down towards where I want it to get brighter, but also I'm going to apply it over the entirety of the armor surface, which is going to bring back a lot of that metallic shine. And it also is going to push back some of that color, that initial Croxagore Scales color that we had in the mixture. Now, the reason for pushing the color down a bit is because I felt it was a little too saturated in color, and I wanted this to be a little bit more diluted and not quite as intense a color on the model, because I didn't really want it to conflict with the magenta of the skin or the brown of the scales. And so that's why I'm kind of knocking some of that saturation out of the armor sections so that it's just not quite that intense. I do like intensity, but in this instance, for this color scheme, again, this color scheme was inspired by my son. He mentioned that he really liked this idea of this kind of color scheme. And so, I thought, what, that's a lot of fun. It kind of inspired me to get these models painted. And so that's where I am going. Again, you can see once you switch to a detail brush, you can just simply paint the edges, or you can just use the side of the brush to catch some of the edges of details and everything like that. Take your time. And one of the biggest things about when you are edge highlighting on a model is always remember to breathe. Breathe. Don't forget to breathe. Slowly, surely, just breathe. Again, you can see we just bring the color forward towards the central part of that face, and all the armor is pretty much done at this point, and I think we can move on. Now, we can go further with some brighter silvers, some Runefang steel, or anything like that, but I think we will move on to the shield next, and then the spear, and then we'll finish this model. So far, we're having a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying this, and of course, we'll get to the details as well. But hopefully you guys have been enjoying this. A big thank you to all of you watching these videos. A big thank you to my patrons. Without your support, these videos are not possible. If you're considering Patreon support, click the link in the description. For everybody else on YouTube, you can also join the members. Lots of perks and such like that. So big thank you to everybody who does that. Take care of your brushes. They'll take care of you, and I will see you in the next tutorial.